backstory here, Renee. I'm at the dentist office, and I know I have to do some workshops coming up with young people, and I'm now collecting magazines from my dentist for use in my workshops. I was really fortunate to have been invited to help install media literacy in the state's visual and performing arts standards. That was probably 4 years ago now. And so an arts coordinator from a rural district called me and said, Frank, I want you to come and do some work with my middle grade students. And I thought, what can I do that would be meaningful to them? I've been working with school librarians for a long time, and I've been telling school librarians, you know, you have magazines at home and at school, but how often have you thought about using them in a media literacy workshop? And so I decided to bring some of these magazines with me for my workshop at this rural middle school. And I had 2 days to work with this group of students. So on day one, we gathered in the media center. And I want to tell you, I brought magazines that were actually outside their reading range. And so on day one, and I hope you all can see this, I actually brought, for example, here's Time magazine. And on the cover of Time was Jay-Z. And so on day one, we did an analysis of magazine covers. We looked at things like color and font and layout and what makes a magazine cover attractive or appealing. Each student got what was assigned to his or her own magazine, and we dove into questions like, who is the audience? How would you know who the audience is? And in fact, a lot of them didn't know the audience. And I said, well, open up the magazine and let's take a look at some of the advertisements. Who are they trying to reach? It was a really engaging session. On day two, they returned to the media center and they were assigned a computer where we had preloaded magazine cover template software. And so their assignment was to recreate the magazine that they were assigned. And so I just want to show you another photograph of this young lady who was assigned Orchid magazine. So imagine she had to go out onto the web and find an appropriate vertical photo and decide on what is the font for the title, what is she going to put on the cover. And here she is. I got to tell you, this young lady was really proud of the cover that she had created. And I got to tell you, her cover was even more attractive than the original. I saw the arts coordinator years later, and she said, Frank, my students are still talking about this activity. So to me, it was the best of media literacy. It was both analyzing on day one, and day two was creating. And that really was the goal. So here we are in the midst of a pandemic, and I'm saying to myself, how is it being represented in magazines? And so I started snagging these magazine covers on a special website, Pandemic. If you Google Pandemic magazine covers, you will find where I have posted literally hundreds of covers. And I'm really appreciative of Renee reaching out to me so that we could dive a little bit more deeply into these covers. Renee, thank you for this opportunity.
Wonderful. So in fact, it turns out that Frank's collection of magazine covers is extremely extensive. We're going to only be dealing with a sample of about 40 or 50 of them, but I think you have hundreds of them now, right, at your curated site. And we're going to give you the link to that at the end of this program. But today we're demonstrating a tool called Mural. And here's basically what's going to happen. Frank and I'm going to teach Frank how to use the Mural. And you guys are going to watch carefully because Frank's not that good at new technology like this. And he's going to learn to use this interactive technology. And then we're going to have you use this technology as well, right? We're going to move through a process that, who's got their microphone unmuted? And let me see what I can do about that. Thank you so much for muting your mic. Appreciate that. So we're going to go through a learning process that looks something like this. Our goals are to apply the theoretical concepts and vocabulary of media literacy to specific examples. We're going to try to activate critical thinking through dialogue and discussion as we consider how the coronavirus pandemic is being represented in media. And we're going to experiment with the use of a digital whiteboard to critically analyze media. First, you're going to watch us work as we model the practice of using the tool, and then you're going to get a chance to practice and apply what you learned. In the course of the next 45 minutes, we're going to get a chance to talk about concepts like authors and audience, to understand how authors create media and how audiences interpret them. We're going to get a chance to think about messages and meanings, and think about how messages contain ideology, values, and specific points of view. We're going to get a chance to think about representation and reality, to understand media as selective representations of reality, right? That have a certain kind of authority or authenticity that can be assessed. At the end of the program, we're going to ask you to provide some reflection and feedback on this program so we can improve it and make it better. But let's who is making that noise? If you could mute your microphone, I'd be really grateful, really grateful. And I'm going to basically introduce you to Mural, because I think many of you have not yet used the tool, and it's really cool. So let's watch this video to learn a little bit about Mural. Hold on. Is joining our meeting. There's Frank. See how you guys can see how Frank has found his identity there? And Frank, introduce yourself. I put your name in the, oh, look at that. Oh! Will everyone give Frank a round of applause? Okay, so Frank, here is the task that I'd like you to do. I'm going to invite you. So I'm moving my canvas. I'm using this mini map. We've got a bunch of examples for our group to analyze. And what we'd like you to do is first, oh, remember the instructions? Let me zoom in to see those instructions. This is the task at hand in the next, for our next, really the whole workshop. We reviewed the learning goals. Look at all 4 corners of the digital whiteboard and review the media literacy concepts you find there. Then take a look at the magazine covers in the center of the mural. Choose one to analyze. Look carefully at how it uses language, image, and graphic design to express ideas and feeling. Then select and drag a magazine cover that you would like to analyze. Use 1 or more sticky notes to explain how you interpret the cover. So see how I'm using my box to move over. I see down here in the middle are the covers we're going to analyze. And then up here at the corner, the right-hand corner, are some of the concepts that I might want to use to analyze. Down at the bottom, I'm scrolling all the way down to the bottom. Down to the bottom are the messages and meanings concepts. And then when I use my little mini map and drag all the way down here, I see the representations and realities. So here's the worked example that I gave you. You can kind of use this as a guide for your own work, Frank. I'm going to zoom in on it so you can see it a little better. I pulled the cover that came from a magazine called Insurance Advocate. And I noticed those dollar signs. And I wrote, the dollar signs symbolize the cost that doctors might have to pay if their malpractice insurance goes up, right? And this magazine is from the point of view of the doctor who has to pay the malpractice insurance for COVID. And I also see how clearly it is targeted at the insurance advocacies, or maybe the insurance companies that represent them. Okay, so Frank, can I ask you to explain in your own words what you think you're going to do next?
Well, Renee, I think I'm going to select a particular cover. I'm going to move it from the collection to a separate area where we can all analyze it, and drag some sticky notes over there and label them using some of the guidance that you have provided.
Beautiful. Okay, we're ready to watch you work, Frank. So go ahead, get started. I use the tool here that allows me to monitor what he's doing. Oh, Frank, you picked an interesting choice. Tell me why you picked it.
This is The Week magazine. And if you don't know about The Week, it's a very interesting publication that comes out weekly. And it reminded me of like a Reader's Digest of everything that was happening in a particular week. I particularly am fascinated every week by the illustrations. And so you can't see the date here, but you could certainly search for this magazine and the cover title, who's in charge. And so the first thing I want to do, Renee, is to get over to a sticky note.
Okay, so you use the black bar. Oh, that's cool. And you drag it over. You can also just double click right on the whiteboard and one will pop right up. Okay, now I wonder what he's going to write.
Let's see. So I think context is important. If you were to come across this magazine, you would probably need to know what was happening in the news at the time to understand who is in charge. Okay?
Right.
I'm wondering what they're going to do about like sick time and vacation time.
I'm going to pull another one here. I'm fascinated by the image itself. I'm looking at the image and I can probably identify some of the people in the image. And so image ID is where we're coming from. So it looks like I can see what looks like the President of the United States in the center. I think that's his son-in-law to his left. I see Dr. Fauci on the far right with his hand over his eye. That might be Mike Pence on the far left. So symbolism also comes into play here, Renee, even though I don't have that sticky. Let me go back here.
All right, Frank, I'm going to give you a little bit of feedback, buddy.
If I were to drag another sticky here, which I will try to do.
Okay.
I want to talk about the symbolism.
You talk.
What is the illustrator trying to communicate by having these individuals on a tilted boat, which looks like it's in a storm, and it appears that the water is coming on to the boat? What does it mean? You know, which is a really good media literacy question. What do you think it means? What is the illustrator trying to communicate here?
Awesome. Now, Frank, show me, because we're teaching our participants who are going to be using this tool, show how you would move that sticky note around. Can you show me how you do that?
Yep.
You kind of hold onto it?
I click on it and I've got my little hand symbol. And so now I can move that sticky note around the page.
Okay. Wow. Let's give Frank a round of applause for playing Mural with this really interesting thing. One of the things I really like about this, Frank, is that for beginners, analyzing a cover can be overwhelming. And so sometimes just to pick on one element, like in your case, the symbolism of the boat in the storm, that gets them started, right? Because experts can analyze many features of a magazine cover, but beginners sometimes should focus on just one thing.
Renee,
Yeah.
There's a question in the chat,
Okay.
and maybe Frank can help answer that. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm going to take over. Is that person?
No, that's good. What's the question in the chat?
The question is, do the colors of the sticky notes symbolize different things if one's yellow and one's green?
Nope.
Great question.
For this activity, we don't make you, that's a more advanced technique, but as a pedagogical practice, that would be awesome. So I would totally like to suggest this. Now, I'm going to see, before I go any further, I'm going to see if I can get one person who's not Frank to explain the task that I'm going to let you loose on now. Who can explain the task that you're going to be doing now when I let you loose? Somebody just talk me through it in your own words. What are you going to be doing?
We're going to look in the four corners of the of your white screen, and then we're going to think about what that means. And then we're going to pick a cover of that magazine, one of those magazines, and we're going to start with at least one on a sticky note, full sentence, and start to analyze the magazine cover.
Wow, a round of applause for that great summary. That was absolutely brilliant. Now, I'm going to share a link with you that doesn't require any login, any sign in. Check it out. Mural knows that sometimes you just want people to be able to get right into something, especially when you have a limited amount of time, and share this link. So I'm going to copy this link and I'm going to put it into the chat room. And then I'm going, yes?
Before we move to analysis, can I ask a question regarding the general collection of magazines Frank selected for today's analysis? So why these magazines? Because we know that there are a lot of other magazines that reflected and covered coronavirus crisis. Why these particular magazines?
Good question. I use the Google image search, and I use several search criteria. For example, pandemic magazine covers, COVID-19 magazine covers, coronavirus magazine covers, and whatever came up, and I searched multiple times daily, these are the ones that came up. Primarily North American based, but as you go through the collection, there are hundreds. You will find magazines from many other countries. Even if I couldn't translate the words, if I saw coronavirus or something that looked like virus or pandemic. And what's interesting is you look at all the covers. And so the top of my pandemic magazine covers database is the oldest covers. So the ones that were published back in March. And then as you scroll down, you will see the references to the virus become fewer and far between. But that was my criteria, and that's a very good question. And I invite others who might have access to covers that I don't have to send them to me and we can add them. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so now I'm going to, and you know what? I'll answer the point from my point of view. I took Frank's great collection of 200, and I just picked some sample interesting looking ones just for purposes of this game. When we could recreate it and do it with different covers, but for this activity, it should be fine. Now, I'm going to invite you guys to go to the chat. If you haven't used Zoom before, is there anybody on the planet who hasn't? But if you haven't used Zoom before, you're going to go to the chat room, because now everyone, can you believe it? Everyone is going to be invited to play on this template. Click the link. You'll be an anonymous somebody and engage in the task. If you have questions, just call out to us and Frank and I will try to answer. All right, we're going to give you a timer and let you work for just 10 minutes. So you have a 10-minute period to work on the mural. Take it away.
Now this should be fun.
It should be fun. We're going to get to watch them all work. Look at them go, Frank.
Now, while everybody's working, Renee, I want to bring up another point that I try to make when I do this. And it's a very simple question. Who benefits when you purchase a magazine? And it's not a question everybody considers. First of all, you have to define the word benefit. But the discussions I've had with teachers and students has been very, very rich. And it goes to the economics. How did these magazines all survive when there are fewer and fewer advertisers out there? I mean, this is, I think, a ripe question and discussion that can ensue as a result of this activity.
Great observation. One thing that I was fascinated with is clearly magazines are designed for generally a niche audience, right? Not a mass, in a way, not a mass audience, but a very particular audience. And sometimes students, it takes, especially if they're looking at a cover that's unfamiliar to them, right? where they're not the target audience. You know, young people are so egocentric that it's like, what is this? Who could this possibly be for? And it takes them a lot of thinking to figure out who might the audience be for.
Yeah, that's why there was such an engaging conversation at this middle school when I brought Time Magazine's Influentials cover, and here was Jay-Z on the cover. I was also done a similar activity with 3 different LeBron James magazine covers and how he is represented for different audiences. I mean, so this is an activity. I live in South Carolina, a very rural state, not a lot of technology in a lot of the schools, and I have to start thinking, how can we teach media literacy if we don't have the technology? And we can do it easily with magazines.
Right, and now this elephant, I'm going to show you. You want to grab one of these, right? Click on it and right click on it and copy it, right? So you can actually copy an element and move it around. Just go copy and paste, and then you can paste a copy. I think you can paste a copy. If not, you can easily recreate these words.
उसको बोलो कि मुझे आप नेहा से डायरेक्टली बात कर लो अजीत और आईटी से कर लो आईटी मेरे को बोलो.
Uh-oh. Mute your microphone if you're not going to talk, please. And if you have a question, let me know. Okay. Let's see, how are you doing? What's really cool is I can see what individuals are doing by following you. So Anonymous Squid, I don't know where you are working, but I don't see you down here. But oh, look at here. See, Frank, somebody's working on the Time for Kids article, right? See, Time for Kids, that's the Time magazine that's targeted for children. And I want to zoom in and take a look at that work a little bit, because I think that cover is actually fascinating. Time for Kids is a fascinating publication, isn't it? Zooming in and zooming out. Oh, good show. Mm-hmm. Look at them work. You guys have just a few minutes remaining. I definitely see some nice annotation happening on this chart. And of course, if you're feeling frustrated or anxious, don't worry at all. The first or second time you use Mural, you could find yourself really annoyed with it. And it takes a learning curve like any new technology to get used to it. So just power through the frustration, right? Do your best.
I can make it big.
I want to try to respond to a question from Anne in the chat. She said, the activity is so baby, magazine covers are so baby boomer. Do kids get mini magazines in their homes? Well, it just depends on the home, obviously. But I think at school, when students are at school, they are exposed to magazines in many school library media centers. And so I don't think of this activity as baby boomer. There are magazine covers all over the web. We see magazine covers when we go to the grocery store checkout. I'm always saying, you know, these covers, you know, they talk to me, pick me up, read me, buy me. And what makes you want to buy a magazine? What makes it so appealing? And I think taking students through an activity like this, they can begin to understand what is the role of the designer of the magazine. Obviously, if it's at the grocery store checkout stand, they do want you to pick it up and buy it. Or if it's a particular genre that you're interested in, they want you to subscribe to it. So I don't see this as a baby boomer kind of activity. I see it as something that would appeal to third graders all the way up to high school and beyond.
Yeah, I have a different answer, but I think that I totally respect that answer. My interest is in getting people to understand the big ideas of media literacy: authors and audiences, messages and meanings, and representation and realities. And so actually this activity could be done with any visual artifact, memes, Facebook posts. And in fact, you can see how flexible the tool is to be used for that purpose, right? It just so happens that we're using Frank's amazing magazine collection. But the opportunity to drag and drop and to visually annotate is really powerful here. Now we're just going to take about 4 more minutes, and then Frank and I are going to go around the board and we're going to comment and ask you to explain your annotation. So feel free to continue to put your work together. We'll take about 3 more minutes, and then we'll do some synthesis.
And interestingly enough, Renee, I actually approached collecting magazine covers, and I think I told you I started one when Donald Trump was elected president. I actually started this activity more as a visual literacy approach, more than a media literacy approach. But when I did it in my media literacy workshops, obviously I would bring in my media literacy concepts. Who's the audience? Who's the creator? What techniques are they using? How might people differently from me see this differently? And again, who benefits? And so it's almost difficult to separate visual literacy from media literacy because they're part of one and the same. They're part of literacy.
Yep, exactly. One of the things that I'm fascinated about is that this activity also could be very nicely as a formative assessment, right? I haven't had a chance to use Mural in my online teaching because I just learned a few weeks ago. But I do think it would be good to see how at the beginning of the semester, how students were able to interpret and analyze visual content, and then to see how that interpretation might change as a part of their exposure to media literacy education. Because some of these concepts you can understand more shallowly and deeply, right? So these are concepts, thinking about, for example, about power and context. Those are really rich concepts, and a beginner will begin to use those concepts, but over time, people's understanding of those concepts will change and grow, right? So the idea here is to provide a palette to get people started thinking about how these are the concepts that you can use as you're analyzing anything at all. Okay, so look at how great it is. We're going to now turn for just a few minutes to take a look at some of the work that has been created. Let's go up here to the top. Hold on here. Let's go up here to the top corner, and I'm going to zoom to one particular part of the program, and we're going to take a look at this example. Wow, Hollywood. I'm going to zoom in on it if I can. Let me see if I can zoom in on it. Hey, Frank, are you seeing what I'm seeing on the screen with Hollywood? I guess what I'm going to do now is I'm going to summon everyone to follow me. Watch how I do this. I'm going to make everybody come to my part of the page. This is also useful. I've just forced everybody to take a look at this beautiful variety cover. Frank, do you want to read out loud and comment on the notations that have been made here?
Sure. The first tab on the upper left says the color's drab and looks like the Hollywood Hills cleared of everything. Okay. Yeah, because if you were at the Hollywood Hills itself, you'd probably see the deforestation under the Hollywood sign, right? So the Hollywood sign has actually been altered to say shutdown, right? The next one says the text looks like the Hollywood sign on a hill, right? Variety is a magazine for the film, theater, and television industries. It covers all of the above. Let's see. My pictures.
So I'm writing in audience because this,
Yeah.
that yellow sticky was really about audience. What else?
Sure. All the performing arts have shut down and nothing is happening. It appears all the performing arts have shut down in their normal mode, but some of them are continuing in a different way. We could dive into that. And someone said, I can't read the small white font. Obviously, on my website, we've had to reduce these covers and they are difficult to read. But you can search through Google for Variety magazine covers, and you can then filter the results to last week, since a Variety is a weekly, or last month, or this year, and you can find the original cover, which again, you could print out and use with students if you wanted to, or project as needed. But yes, we've had to reduce them, which makes them difficult to read.
Nice. Let's give a round of applause to the person who did Variety. Who did Variety? And we can give you a round of applause. That was awesome.
I did.
Beautiful work here. Okay, now we're going to this section right here. Isn't this a fascinating page, Frank? Again, I'm summoning you all to my page. Come take a look. Isn't this cool? Let's talk it out loud. Who wants to read aloud? I see the first word we notice is surge, awaiting the surge. Of course, I'm wondering what that means. So I'm gonna make a notice on this sticky. Whenever I can't make a notice, I'm gonna go, it has to do with meaning, right? The word surge means different things in different contexts. So what is the surge? Is it the great increase in the number of cases and deaths? Yeah. What else? What else do you notice about this analysis? Look at this one, Frank. Pointy virus acting like a needle. Needles symbolize medicine and in particular immunizations, right? So that's a cool interpretation, a visual interpretation of the pointiness. And this one, the earth is breaking, full of cracks. That symbolizes something.
Yeah.
And the target audience of this paper is Santa Barbara hipsters. Great work there. I'm going to put the bubble audience here to remind us that whenever you're thinking about the audience, you are thinking about interpretations, right? Nice. This is a wonderful analysis of the FP and the Independent. Frank, are you familiar with FP? What kind of magazine is that?
Renee, I think it's Foreign Policy magazine.
Mm-hmm.
I believe.
Renee, is there a way you could reshare the screen? I joined a little bit late. I think I can't see it. There might be a couple other people that got in late too.
Sure. If you're just driving and you want to jump on the mural with us, I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to give you an anonymous link. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to throw it into the chat room. Thanks for asking. Is that Brian Turnbaugh there? Or who was that who asked that question? Yeah, it was my friend Brian. I'm so glad you're there, buddy. Okay, so there you go. Jump into the chat room, and there is the link. Okay, we just have a few minutes left. Is there somebody who would like to show us part of your mural? What part of the mural should we look at next? Oh, look at this one. Love it. Oh, very strong. This is definitely an emotional cover. Wrecking ball coronavirus image relates to the upheaval of normal life. Frank, how are they achieving that emotional effect? Can you explain?
Well, Renee, we might say they want us to make a reference to what looks like a wrecking ball. What does a wrecking ball traditionally do? And how is it being used in this case? And what is it wrecking? And this is National Review, as I understand it, a conservative publication. And I haven't read the articles, but are they really talking about wrecking our economy? Because we have the skyline in the background in red, and then we have what looks like yellow, which might be sunset. I mean, is this the end of the world? The pathogen of destruction?
Right.
Might it be a radical interpretation of what exactly is happening? Who's communicating what, for what purpose? The great media literacy questions to ask.
This is cool. My name is Andrea, and I actually did this one, and I didn't notice until you said, Frank, that it says pathogen of destruction, like path of destruction. I didn't even see that until you said that.
Ah, wordplay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm putting that in there for the wordplay. That's great. So we've got language used here. Beautiful work. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, we only have a few minutes left. And so I guess I want to kind of go back to the big picture. Today, we played with a tool called Mural to think about how magazines communicate messages about audience, about stereotypes, about power, about values, and how the representations of the coronavirus vary depending on the target audience and the magazine's purpose. And you guys were able to do some really creative work here. Before we go to the feedback and reflection, where I share this link so that you can continue to play and learn with Mural, I want to give Frank Baker a round of applause for developing this incredible resource of the magazine covers. So Frank, thank you so much for
Don't applaud, please just send money.
Really, really happy to have you be part of that. I'm now going to invite you all to come over here to the corner. I'm summoning you all over here to the corner. Please take a minute or two, and we'll just do, I'll set the timer for 4 minutes. We'll do 4 minutes of feedback. What did you like about this workshop? What did you learn from this workshop? What could be improved? Feel free to double click on the sticky and make a new one, right?
Renee, I just want to add, I've not used the phrase rich media text in the last hour, but I've found these magazines to be rich media text. I've also not used the phrase close reading, but the questions that you pose, the media literacy questions and concepts, allow teachers and students to do a more close read, which many of them have not had the experience to do. So I see this tool, from my point of view, very valuable, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with my audiences as well.
Thank you so much. One of the things we're going to try to do in the next week or two, and we'll share this with everybody who's registered, is to create a template that's available to you to use, right? So this one's all filled up, but I'm going to be sending you via email a blank template that you can try using yourself, right? So we want to see what happens when lots of people start playing around using Mural for media analysis. Now, as we hear the feedback and response to this program, we also have time for about 10 minutes of comments and questions. So yeah, so what comments and questions do you have? The floor is open for you, our Zoom friends.
Renee, there are people.
Sorry. I was going to ask a question, so I unmuted.
Yeah, unmute yourself and ask your question or make your comment.
So if you're going to use this with an online class, how much training do you think they need before they can use it effectively for an assignment?
Oh, we have no idea. We're still trying to figure that out, my friend. That's why we did this session.
Yeah, I think every learner is going to be different. You know, you'll have some who will pick it up right away and want to jump right in, and others who it might take days, maybe a week for them to be comfortable.
Good question. Thanks for asking. What's your opinion?
Well, I think the video was helpful, but getting into it is better. So I might assign like a quick exercise for them to practice before I would do a graded one.
Yeah, we do there on the mural. There are some fun like icebreaker activities that are designed to give people practice. We had contemplated that, Frank, but we realized we only had an hour, so we decided against it. Other
Renee,
comments and questions?
lots of folks are asking about the archive, and you do archive all of your virtual hangouts, of which this is one. So anybody that's missed it or came in late can watch the entire thing, and you'll be posting that probably later today or tomorrow.
Absolutely right. The recording will be posted, and you'll get an email with a link to how you can use a fresh blank magazine mural with any of the learners you want. So won't that be fun?
So can I say a few words to Frank? I'm sorry, Jen. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to say to Frank that I'm very glad to have met you today. And I don't know if you can see this little book.
Yes.
Okay. I have it since 2007. When I heard you were the one that we're going to be on today, I just couldn't resist to have it here.
Well, thank you. Thank you. You know, I'm really proud of that book and that series. Capstone Press actually came to me and said, we're creating a media literacy series of books for elementary students, which, as far as I know, is the first ever series of books covering media literacy for young people. So I'm very proud of it, and I thank you very much for mentioning. I'm sorry that it's out of print.
No, thank you. I love it. And it was one of the first ones that really inspired me to, get into it. So thank you.
Thank you. My wife thanks you as well.
Great.
So do you go from the magazine cover to talk about perhaps the bias or the emotion that you see on the outside? Is that what's reflected on the inside? Do you then go in and analyze some of the articles? Is that one of the steps that you do with this also?
What a great idea.
Yes, absolutely. You could, because obviously the cover is an advertisement for itself. It advertises itself. It says, and many elements on the cover will tell you what else is in the magazine. So depending on how much time you have, yes, you could explore the cover story, which is the main story, and begin to look for bias or who was interviewed, who was not interviewed. This is a really good example of diving deep. For the students that I worked with at the middle school, when I asked them to open the magazine and look at the advertisements, they would help identify the audience. One student in that group did not know the difference between an article and an advertisement. So that opened up, tremendous opportunities.
Other comments, questions?
Frank, I have a question. So how do you collect all of these? I mean, what's the process by which you just kind of prune away? What does that look like?
Brian, you joined us a little late. I had a question about that. I used the Google image search, and I used a parameter where I would search for the phrase pandemic magazine covers, and then coronavirus magazine covers, and also COVID-19 magazine covers. And so whatever came up, and lots of magazines came up, and I've searched several times a day. And so whatever was posted to the Google image results was snagged and became part of the collection. Thank you for asking it again.
So you use the Google, and then you just do a straight, you save the actual image, not a copy paste of it into a.
Yes, it was a copy and paste of the image, magazine cover image into a Word document. So you'd have 3 or 4 magazines, and actually 6 or 8 that were snagged and saved and then put onto the page as JPEGs.
Thank you.
So I wanted to.
Eva.
Yes, I wanted to say I teach in a upper school level, and I teach a public speaking class, and we do a good ad versus bad ad assignment, and the assignment is really a setup for their PowerPoint presentation or Google Present for a speech. And I find a lot of the things that you're talking about, I also teach I teach in the visual arts department and the theater department. So I use those visual terminologies like visual path and color theory and other things like that, font, et cetera, to prep them. And I find it a very significant activity for them to then transfer to a PowerPoint so that they understand how important imagery is and how less important text is, and the text really needs to say something. So that helps a lot.
Great observation. You know, my experience is not many teachers engage students in a close read of a magazine cover. They don't have experience doing this. That's why I think this webinar and this tool, Mural, are perfect for all of you who want to dive deeper.
All right, we have time for just one more comment or question.
Can I ask a question? It's Andrea again. So my school does not have access anymore to subscriptions. They don't do that anymore. And I'm just wondering if you have any kind of resources that a teacher might use if they wanted to do more literacy, kind of like beyond the cover of magazines, if there are places where teachers should be looking for stuff like this.
Well, I can tell you from my own public library, it has a subscription to a magazine service that literally has hundreds of magazines for free. And so that would be my first recommendation. Renee, do you have another one?
No, but I think what I'll do is that's exactly what I was going to suggest, is if you don't have a school library that has digital subscriptions to magazines, then your public library sure does. Many people read magazines now digitally from their public library. And I'll put a link to that in my follow-up email to you. Okay, so we have finished our magazine media literacy program. I just want to kind of remind you what's coming up next at the Media Education Lab, so that you might want to join us again. If you're really into Mural and you want to continue to hang out with us, we are starting in just 3 or 4 minutes a really cool session today in Virtually Viral Hangouts. Virtually Viral Hangouts happens every day, Monday through Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern, and today we're using Mural for another activity. But on May 18th, we're going to be talking about Saturday Night Live. And when you ever get a bunch of media literacy geeks together who are talking about Saturday Night Live, it's really fun. And that event is on May 18th. And then, of course, we're very lucky to be featuring a student reporting labs, PBS NewsHour's wonderful student journalism program on May 27th. And then our monthly media club happens June 1st. We're talking about online behavior, real life consequences, the unfolding of the social media scandal. We're critically analyzing a podcast. So thanks for joining us today for magazine media literacy. Thanks, Frank Baker, for being part of this.
Thank you, Renee.
Bye now. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.